Hi everyone, this is Ellie, and if this video found you and you were interested in the title, then you must be dealing with trauma and grief, and it must be having a devastating effect on your life. Now, the title of this video is How Do You Find and Reclaim Yourself After Surviving Trauma and Grief? So I'm going to start with, I want to acknowledge that everyone has their own story, and each person handles trauma, pain, and grief, and whatever else life throws at them in their own unique way. I can only speak from my experience and what I have learned on my journey. They do say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and I can attest to that. However, you do get to a point when you wonder how much more you might have to endure in this lifetime, and whether or not the good times will ever make a comeback. Maybe you're at this point. I faced quite a few times when I did not want to continue another day, another struggle, more pain, uncertainty of where my life was going, and I'm sure you can relate to that. Some days getting out of bed is just too much to ask when you're physically and mentally exhausted from living in survival mode. And the constant ache in your chest, right? Grief, heartache, depression are very isolating. It feels as though nobody around you understands what you're facing and the constant pressure you're under when you are expected to move on with your life, as if nothing earth-shattering had occurred. You get to the point when you feel you have become a burden to the people around you, even though they all mean well. But you wonder if they get tired or annoyed when you constantly call them, when you cry on the phone, when you cancel plans because you just don't have it in you to be around people pretending to have a good time. When you feel completely emotionally cut off from the world around you and any joy it once held, right? How do you come back from that? How do you reclaim that part of yourself that used to love life, was always up for an adventure, and enjoyed laughing more than anything? There are no simple answers to these questions, and you cannot apply timeline to your healing. But first, know that listening to what your body is signaling to you is very important. If you need extra sleep, honor that. If you feel like isolating, honor that. However, if you get to that very dark place when you cannot find any light at all, please talk to a therapist or supportive people around you. Sometimes medication may be necessary when you can't pull yourself out of that darkness. You may find that you feel guided to spend more time in nature, become more physically active. When I was at the beginning of my grief journey, I walked around my neighborhood or on my favorite hiking trails for hours each day because it helped me get out of my head and gave my turbulent emotion and energy an outlet. I was unable to eat much and lost about 40 pounds in a short amount of time, but I forced myself to eat. There were some friends who checked in with me every day, and it was so helpful to feel validated and loved. Family, friends, communities, and your faith, your church can be such a support and source of strength. I unfortunately buried myself in work to distract myself from the chaos inside me. I was going to college full-time, worked at my job on weekends, and volunteered on any days I was free. This stressful life continued for a few years. I was able to numb myself enough to function, and so dedicated to pushing my pain away that I was quite successful in school and career. Of course, this could not last forever. There were times, especially during COVID or through longer illnesses which required rest and isolation from my usually crazy busy life, when grief would not only rear its ugly head, but would also completely consume me. When you can't distract yourself, things you have not dealt with will come up to be processed. People who continually resist this process will eventually become physically ill as the trauma lodges in the body. Any somatic exercises, yoga, or EFT tapping are quite helpful in releasing these energies. Imagine all the intense feelings of grief and trauma as a ball of energy. This ball of energy must be released or it gets stuck and causes harm in the body, illness, disease. Exercise will not fix the mental and psychological damage this trauma has caused, though. Grief groups, therapy, and counseling are the only things that help with that. Suppressing your grief is never the answer. Grief and trauma have to be faced, accepted, and worked through. Just a side note, addictions are never the answer, but unfortunately, what many people turn to in order to avoid feeling pain. Not only are addictions harmful, they are stopping your progress on your healing journey. Alcohol may actually worsen your grief and pain, as it is a depressant. Drugs and sex may provide a temporary dopamine hit, but these effects don't last very long, and you'll find yourself right back where you started, in pain without a solution. Be patient with yourself and don't let others tell you that you should be over it by now. There are losses you simply cannot ever let go of. All you can do is learn to live with them and try to find purpose in your life again. I found grief groups and counseling the most helpful. It is very important to be able to talk to people who understand what you are going through, as they are experiencing grief and trauma themselves. To find a safe space where you are heard, understood, and validated without criticism or impatience is where your healing can start. Make a point of pushing yourself to attend meetings, whether virtually or in person, even on days where you don't feel like it. You will thank yourself for your dedication later, as this kind of support is invaluable for your healing. Don't compare your story of grief to other people's, as no matter what, your pain is no less valid than anyone else's. The same level of compassion and empathy you bestow on others, you are equally deserving of. So always hold space for yourself, for your emotions, and for your experience. Grief comes in waves, so don't get discouraged if you have a few days where you start to feel better, only to have the world come crashing around you again. Be extra loving, caring, and patient with yourself on those days. Don't set a timeline for grief and healing. It took me over 2 years to be able to function normally without feeling like I was living in the twilight zone, to break out of my mental and emotional fog and feel almost normal again. That doesn't mean that I didn't have bad days. I was hyper-focused on work for a long time, but as I said before, I was forced to slow down due to illness or COVID restrictions. These periods of quiet helped me go within and process heavier thoughts and emotions, cry and release them. Exercise is always important to help work with repressed emotions and to quiet your overworking mind. I immersed myself in yoga and EFT tapping, where you tap on the meridian centers of your body, which sends a calming signal to a part of your brain called the amygdala, which is responsible for your fight, flight, or freeze responses. This practice resets your nervous system and helps you feel safe in your current environment and circumstances. You can look these up on YouTube, actually. I also delved into my spiritual side, took Reiki courses, attended meditation sessions, read books on life after death, and strengthened my bond with my spirit team and my faith. I believe that people who are atheists must have a harder time coping with grief and trauma and fear of death. It can be a big relief to place your trust that everything is as it is meant to be, and that our souls have somewhere to go after death with a higher power. I also left my tedious job and found a career where I'm helping people, where I feel needed. This new job gave me a place where I could focus my love and attention, and where I feel appreciated and valued by my clients. I get much fulfillment from this job. It may help you process your trauma and grief by being a source of light for those around you who are struggling. Of course, you must be at a stage in your healing where you have already pulled yourself out of the darkness and are ready to be of service to others. You just have to be mindful that you do not use this mission of service to humanity to distract yourself from your pain through keeping too busy to spend time with yourself and your healing. Balance is key. Look at every aspect of your daily life and notice where you may be giving too much of your time or attention, whether it is work, family, obligations, or volunteering, even excessive exercising. Then make a strong commitment to yourself to restore balance and have time for you, time to rest, time to work on a piece of art, which, by the way, is an excellent way to process trauma, and to talk to someone if you're having a bad day. Always be good to you. Give yourself the same love, compassion, and validation you would afford a much loved family member in similar circumstances. Finally, I found inner child healing work very effective. You sometimes don't even realize how your formative experiences growing up are still affecting you in adulthood. And often with trauma and grief, it is that little girl or boy inside of us crying out for love, support, attention, and affection that may have been lacking or conditional in our early environment. There are excellent inner child meditations available online, but you can get in touch with your inner child without videos or audios. Just close your eyes, relax, and imagine meeting little you. Ask them what's bothering them. Hug them and give them love and affection in your mind's eye. Wait for them to either tell you verbally or telepathically what experiences they've had that are still causing them pain. Thank them for sharing, and then tell them they are allowed to let this go. And you can actually envision putting that problem, that issue, that pain in a bubble and sending that bubble up to the sky. Or to put that issue, that problem, that pain in a box and to kind of blow that box up together. So you can do that to help them let that go, to help you to let this go. And then ask them what you can do right now to help them feel better and give them time and space to answer. And you may feel guided to play a game you used to enjoy as a child, to draw a picture, to watch a cartoon you used to love, to go to a park and sit on the swings, or play in the sand on the beach. Listen to those intuitive nudges, even if they might make you feel silly. I started reading children's books out loud to myself every night at bedtime, and my inner child loves it. I also ask her to help me when I record readings, as I used to love recording myself on audio tapes, acting out stories, reciting poems, or singing songs when I was very young. It is very healing to lovingly parent your inner self the way your parents may not have been able to do in the past. You have nothing to lose by trying this. Another side note, practicing forgiveness with people who have hurt you, even just in your mind, is very healing. Now, finally, I do recommend doing your research on anything I or anyone else recommend to aid you on your healing journey. At the end of the day, anyone can only speak of their own experiences, and what worked for them may not work for you. But isn't it worth to at least try? I wish you the very best. Ask your angels, your spirit team to envelop you in healing, love, and light, and be kind to yourself. Take care.